That's it. I woke up in the middle of the night. Yeah, I woke up in the middle of the night and
which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Council Member. We'll do a quick roll call. Council Member Gully. Council Member Garrett. Here. Council Member Parator is absent. Council Member Cummings.
Here.
Council Member December.
Present.
Council Member Kennedy.
Present.
All right. Council Member Parator is joining us. Awesome timing. Everything is about timing. You know that. All right. So we're here this evening. As many folks know, I want to say even 4 years ago, when I first began my tenure, there were concerns about surveillance cameras, the surveillance police cameras, stating that the horrific incident with Mr. Thevenin, I believe that camera that evening was not working. And, maybe 4 years later, would have saved maybe a lot of money and maybe made that horrific incident a little clearer. But fast forwarding, I want to say about a year ago, not just myself, but other council members raised this issue and regarding how the cameras are not working all the time at the same time. And we essentially were told, okay, it's not so much a hardware issue, it's a software issue, it's an SD card issue, it's a technology issue. This evening, nobody's here to point fingers. My goal, hopefully, is to move forward to pin down a real plan with real timelines, with a vendor who can assist us, give us an idea of the dollars that are needed to do this. I am aware that Assemblymember McDonald appropriated state money to assist the effort. I've been in several communications with interested vendors who would like to potentially offer their services for the city. I have forwarded those folks to the chief, to the mayor. I have one that contacted me today, and I'll make sure that the council are on these two emails. One of the vendors, actually, Mr. McCormick, full disclosure, a Lansingburg grad, many years ahead of me, many years ahead of me. Three.
It's always turning to three.
So he is with a company who is interested in doing business with the city, and there is another company who, Josh Chapone, you probably know Sam Chapone, he is also involved with a company who has also reached out to us. So full disclosure, I'll forward it to all the council members, and I informed the chief also. But, in my opinion, I know the other night for the members that attended the Lansingburg neighborhood meeting, it was attended by, I want to say, a couple hundred folks. And, I think folks felt like they left there thinking, okay, the cameras don't help. They don't solve crimes, they don't deter crime, and I know from us that's not the message that we want to give, and the chief is going to join us tonight, and I know that's not the message the chief wants to give either or the administration. In my opinion, they do deter crime. They do solve crimes, whether it be the notice of a tattoo, the notice of maybe a marking, sneakers, jeans, you name it, they're clues. So saying that, I do know, maybe even there was a major crime with the horrific incident with the suitcase murder. I believe that surveillance cameras might have helped that case be solved. But saying all of that, I think us as a council, we want to hear pie tonight, what can we do to partner with the mayor and the chief to get these cameras up and running all the time at the same time? So without, further ado, I would ask Chief Owens to join us. And, Chief, I want to make it very, very clear. I know that your men and women are working their tails off. They're really, really trying to address some of these issues that are happening specifically in Lansingburg and North Central. And, I really feel that the neighborhoods, want to see a real 21st century camera network throughout the city. And I know you do too. And I'm just here to say, at least me, I can't speak on behalf of everyone. I want to help you. I want to make this work. Let's do it. So I'll pass it along to you. And I know you've been working on this for a long time, even before you became chief. So thank you.
Good evening. Thank you. We've definitely talked about it in this setting before, and certainly other settings, where the camera system as it was initially intended was for the downtown central business district. And as it was built, it was intended and planned to have connection to fiber optic to increase the capacity of the cameras. It was never rolled out that way. It was strictly wireless. And over the course of the years, the wireless has become congested, in the opinion of our vendor. We're also reaching the end of the useful service life for a lot of the equipment. So while you mentioned the cameras are not always working, they work, but there are certainly intermittent issues, and that's the problem we have. And of course, as Murphy's Law would have, at the times that sometimes we may need a particular camera, it seems that that camera might be down, whereas 23 hours a day it might be up, but it just so happened at that time. To your point, I think technology is an extremely useful tool in policing. Cameras throughout the city, the existing locations, and then if you and the administration want to look to expand that and fund that to be expanded, certainly helpful. There's approximately 120 cameras on the street, 22 or so intersections. That's not including the cameras within and around the police station. So cameras are certainly not everywhere in the city. I mean, that's a very small chunk of the city in terms of coverage geography-wise. To your point about cameras and the recorded video being useful in the investigative process, absolutely, they can be useful. In terms of evidence, they can be useful. It's not guaranteed that it's sufficient to identify someone in enough detail to make a positive identification. Cameras certainly at times may deter activity, but when I mentioned at the other meeting and at other times where I said they're not a complete deterrent, because I don't want to give people the false sense that merely the presence or the installation of a camera is going to deter particularly a violent criminal who's intent on committing a crime. As we talk about recent crime in Troy, we had 2 bank robberies, which is not typical for us. And I think everyone realizes that banks are covered by video cameras. Probably only slightly less than like a casino or a high-level government building. And it still doesn't deter people from committing a crime. Are they useful after the fact? Absolutely. So when I spoke the other night and a gentleman raised that question, I wasn't saying that they don't deter crime, but they also don't automatically deter crime. I don't want people to think just having a camera there is going to deter crime.
Council member.
Yeah, just to build on that, I did do extensive research, and every study that I found showed no correlation between cameras and deterrence of crime in urban areas. So to state that it serves as a deterrence is not correct.
Actually, I think the chief said it's a deterrent, but he doesn't want to give false hope that it's going to be the panacea.
Yeah.
There's no doubt cameras are a deterrent, and I don't
No,
think
there is a
we
doubt.
want
I
to.
just said, and there's no research
We
or
can
study that I
agree to
could find.
disagree, because I totally disagree.
But if you could, yeah, you can disagree, but there's no study or research out there that shows that cameras influence crime rates to be a deterrent.
Okay.
Council President.
Yes, Councilmember.
I believe, Councilman Kenny, I did look at information again, I believe you're right, and I would agree. A camera might not be the deterrent. What really becomes a deterrent is when everybody knows that the system is up and running, functional, and streets are being covered. It's really not the camera itself. It's the conception that all the cameras are working, and where you go, you're gonna be seen. And I think the advertisement and the media coverage that they are up and running will deter the weak criminals that are just on that borderline saying, oh man, peer pressure gets in the way. It's not gonna stop a lot of people, but the ones that stop might help us. And I agree, it's not the camera, but it is the intent that if they're all working and everybody knows it, it will turn the weak away.
And that's the point. Chief, Councilmember there.
I don't know what report you guys are looking up, but I'm looking at a report right now. Baltimore, Chicago, and Washington D.C. both said that the cameras, it may not have stopped people from doing crime, but it definitely lowers the crime rates. I know in particular, North Central is becoming a hazardous area. The corner store by my house just got robbed yesterday morning, and that's a decent store. So I don't know how we can get it set up, but we definitely need to get it set up, because even if people are not likely to do something if they know that they're being watched. It's not everybody, but at least if we have that there, then we can potentially see like maybe some of the crime going down. And I'll be happy to share this article with everybody.
Thank you, Councilmember, and that hence my point. Thank you, Chief, if you could continue, that'd be great.
Sure. So I don't know if your plan was to have particular questions or to have discussions about things we've already talked about. Our plan, and we've been working on this for multiple months now.
And I don't mean to interrupt, Chief, and I talked to the chief before the meeting. I think, and just so you know, in full disclosure, what I'm looking for at least, and I think the rest of the council, we could leave here with a real plan, a real timeline, a vendor. We can certainly expedite the RFP for that. Basically, give us something tangible, money-wise, how much money would be needed, and we'll act. So I want you to know, we're here to work with you. Thank you.
Thank you. We have requested multiple vendors to look at a solution. And going forward, we want to look at a solution that's not only going to replace what we have in the existing locations, but also be supported by a maintenance program. The existing city cameras do not have a current maintenance program, so we're paying time and materials as repairs are necessary, and that's once we become aware that there's a problem. So those cameras that are not connected to the station wirelessly, until we go to that location and after a particular incident to retrieve video, we're not even aware that the recording at the camera is down. So that's important going forward, to have a maintenance program and also to have that IT support. I know the city is currently looking for another network manager, so that is an important consideration going forward, that we have that IT support from the vendor as well.
Chief, on that note, could we hire that out? I mean, do you see that being more beneficial in-house or out-house private IT support? I mean,
I don't know that I can answer for the city. I could say it would be helpful for the police department if we had our own IT person, just because of the amount of technology that we have.
right.
And moving forward with the other major project in terms of video, which is at times I think a little bit of competing priorities, maybe for funding or certainly for our research time, is the body worn camera program.
Yeah. Good point.
So the vendors that we've spoken to date, they've done site assessments. They've looked at the current setup, and all of them to this point have said that the network is the issue for sure. The existing cameras, while they are about to reach the end of their useful service life, they will no longer be supported by the manufacturer next year. They are still useful and they could be reused. Of the vendors we've spoken to so far, it's about 4 or 5. We have one actual submitted quote to replace the existing network, all the labor involved, the engineering, and that does not include replacing the cameras at each location. It does include, I think, 4 or 5 cameras in that quote, just to replace ones that are completely not operational, not just ones that are simply not connected. And that quote is roughly, I think, $185,000. As you mentioned, I think the member item, or I don't think they call it member item anymore,
Right, line item.
but from the assemblyman is about $125,000.
Okay. Did everyone hear that the assemblyman was able to get 125? Yep, thank you.
And then 185 includes, you go back to what exactly that?
Sure. Yep. So that one quote that we have received is just to replace basically the network. So it would reuse the existing cameras, but it does allow for, I think there was 4 or 5, if they were completely not functional, the cameras altogether. Not just they weren't connecting, but that they were completely power issues, whatever. So at all of the existing sites, that doesn't expand any sites, that doesn't add any additional cameras beyond those replacement ones. But it does build in some additional redundancy. So as it stands now, the cameras at each location have an SD card, a storage card, which based on activity is roughly 1 or 2 days worth of storage. The problem with those is, my understanding from the manufacturers, the read-write cycles of the SD cards are not intended to just be continuously overwritten for years. And so we've replaced them at least twice now over the course of, or the 7 years that we've had the camera project now. We're going to replace them again. But as I mentioned, we don't know that they've failed until we have a reason to go there to pull video from that card. So that quote, the one quote that we've received so far, includes SD card replacement at all the cameras. It also includes local storage at each intersection of, basically it's described as a small network video recorder. So most intersections have 4 cameras. So there'd be the SD card in each camera, this NVR at the site for the 4 cameras, and then the wireless streams back, and it would be stored on servers located at the police station.
Council member and then council member Perry.
I just didn't hear that last part. The NDR, what was that component in the cameras you were just referring to? It's not the SD card, but something else?
The proposal includes a network video recorder, so a small standalone recorder at the location. So the SD card will record at the camera, and then this NVR will record the 4 cameras at each intersection, and then the cameras will stream on the network back to the servers where they'll also be recording. So those 2 local storage, if you will, the SD card at the camera, the NVR at the site, will be short-term storage. The servers at the police station obviously will be much higher capacity storage. We hope to have at least 30 days of recorded storage. That's another thing we've run into over the years. The original servers, the recording servers at the station, were intended for so many cameras that they started the project with. As they added cameras, that increases the amount of stored video, so that decreases the total capacity available. So starting out, we're going to have capacity for the number of cameras we have. Again, if you want to look to expand cameras, we also want to make sure that we're expanding the storage at the same time, so we're not in the same boat where we're cutting into the existing storage.
And council member Parator, and then I have a question, then council member Parator.
Thank you. I have 2 questions, Chief. The first, you said that this, what you're proposing, the 185,000, is to take care of the current 120 cameras. Is 120 cameras sufficient for the city of Troy?
Sufficient in terms of coverage geography-wise? I would say not. It's essentially 22 intersections of the city, or 22 locations, small area locations within the city. So if the plan, going forward, is to cover the entire city, it's definitely not sufficient. I mean, you're only going to get video where those cameras are, that not even a full 1 block radius. So they're usually at the intersection, so there are 4 cameras, each facing one direction. For most blocks, it's about halfway down the block that you can see on video. Sometimes not even that, depending on the angle of the camera, the height of the traffic mast arm that goes across the intersection, if they're mounted there, or if they're on the utility pole in the corner. So if the question is to expand coverage, we would certainly need well more than 120 some-odd cameras, yes.
But have you identified particular areas of high crime where you need more cameras right now?
We look at hotspot policing in terms of our deployment of resources to the extent that we can. Sometimes it's limited and we're not able to devote additional resources. So certainly we, through our research partner, the crime analysis, the Capital Region Crime Analysis Center, we can look at those areas and we can plot those on a map. That would be well beyond the 22 current intersections, if you will. But that proposal, that quote from that vendor is just to replace the existing one. It's not looking at expansion of locations at all.
So how do we solve that problem? Is this something that requires further study on your part, of the police? You need to tell us where you need them.
Well, I could say this, going back, the role I was in previously as a captain of technology and grants, the camera project began as a city administration project, and then it was left to the police department to manage after it began. So I fully understand that the camera program, the city surveillance camera program, is under the police department. I have no problem moving forward with that. I've been to meetings, neighborhood meetings, where some speakers don't want cameras in their neighborhood. Many do. So I leave that to the elected officials, to the administration, to decide what level and what degree this camera program, if we're going to keep it in existence, what we have, if we're going to expand it, what that looks like. We would offer input as to where we can identify hotspots in terms of criminal activity, and then we can build from there. So I think to answer the question, that would come from beyond the police department, and then certainly the funding and budgeting would have to be identified to cover that.
Okay, thank you, Chief. My second, more a point than a question. To me, the most important thing we need are police body cameras. I don't want this to overshadow the need for police body cameras in the city of Troy. And Council President, you spoke about us potentially bonding for the money for the surveillance cameras. I just want to put that in the context of how do we have the funding we need to get police body cameras as soon as possible in the city of Troy.
We do, and I'll let the chief jump in on where we are with all that, but this is separate from body cams. This is totally, a different subject, but the body cams, we've received a DCJS grant. The council also appropriated money to match that grant. It's more now a matter of the implementation. I'll leave that to the chief to fill us in.
I'd like an installation date. I've asked that a few times in these settings. When is it going to happen? When are we going to have police body cameras in Troy?
You've asked that question, and to the best of my ability, I've answered it each time. The body-worn camera program has continued to move along. We have submitted the draft written policy to the administration, to the city's labor council, as well as the labor union councils. Will review that, make their concerns known, or however they want to make their input available into the draft policy. We'll move forward with selecting a vendor. As we talked about, I think it was the last meeting we may have talked about, we had hoped to have a pilot program. We were not able to do that. So we're going to move forward. We narrowed it down to 2 potential vendors. We have refreshed the quotes from when we got them months ago, and that's the next phase.
Thank you, Chief. Councilmember Gully, and real quick, Chief, I kind of view this as a short-term, long-term. In answer to Councilmember Parator, the long-term, identify other hotspots, work with neighborhoods. I see the short-term, let's get these up running all the time, functionally, so I kind of see it maybe a phased approach. And also, I want folks to know the public comment period. I apologize. We went right into the meeting. I will have that at the end of the meeting. I apologize. Councilmember Gully.
Chief, a couple of questions if I could ask, and I have to ask you another question again. The vendor gave you what quote for the price of just replacing the cameras that are bad and upgrading the system? What was that number?
We've requested quotes from multiple vendors. We've received one back. So the one quote that we received back was, I think it was $185,000.
That's just for the existing system.
It's for the replacing the wireless at all the existing locations, the back-end servers, the redundant storage of the SD cards and those local NVRs.
Okay.
But it's not to replace each individual camera. they're gonna
I just
reuse.
wondered now. Now, one time we talked and somebody said that some of the cameras don't give you a very clear depiction of what's happening. Is that true that some of the camera shots are just not as, doesn't have the pixel strength, whatever they call it, camera land, to have a clear photo?
Sorry.
Is there something there that we should look at before we step into just repairing the cameras that we might want to upgrade so we know we have clarity of what we can present, so it can be accepted in the court of law?
Absolutely. So the resolution of the cameras, again, they're at this point probably 7 years old. So the cameras that we have are 1.3 megapixel. Very, very low resolution in terms of what's available. Ideally, as we make this replacement, we should replace each of the cameras, but it's going to come down to a matter of funding. So we're requesting additional quotes from that vendor for the upgrade of particular cameras, but also the other vendors can submit either reusing the cameras or upgrading the cameras as well.
Do we have, with the particular vendors, are you asking them if they're giving you, if they could also include a cost for an updated camera, what it costs us per unit? So we could kind of value that as how we expand and what we need to have financially in the funding to make that happen. Can we get those numbers?
Absolutely.
Perfect.
The second thing I have is the money we haven't holding, 125 from John McDonald. There's also some, what do they call it, confiscation money or what do they call it?
There's forfeiture funds. I think
Forfeiture funds.
our forfeiture fund account, I don't have the exact figure off the top of my head. I want to say it's about probably $70,000 at this point.
So do we know how much we have funding that can go towards this project as it is before we talk about expansion?
From existing budget lines?
Well, from what you have, like last time we spoke about this, we were told it wasn't the funding, that the funding was in place, we just needed to get the actuation going. So I'm asking, what funding do we have in place? How much do we have? And I don't need that tonight, you can let us know at a different time. My other question would be is, will the vendor offer us any self-sustaining portable cameras that run off an SD card? So if you have a hotspot in the city, we could take 4 or 5 cameras or 10 cameras and get them on cornered areas to block off these troubled areas, so we can kind of get a grip. When we're starting to have a hotspot, we can actually get in there and have our guys put some cameras on there so we can watch that area for a few weeks and record it. Do they have any type of portability, or have we asked about that yet?
The technology is certainly out there. At one point, we had a couple of our own, and it was just old technology. They were not reliable at all. But certainly we can look at that as an option as well for other areas that aren't covered by the fixed locations.
Can you give us the financial impact on those cameras per unit and what the vendor might charge us just to trade someone to get them up, get them running in hotspots? Because I think that would be a benefit. If we can't outfit the whole city, let's get to where the trouble is and let's get a coverage on it.
I do see the vendor shaking his head, yes.
Yeah, there's certainly for cameras. There's a lot of options, but you have to
Not
decide.
the vendor, a vendor.
Council President, I'm going to have to raise an objection on behalf of the mayor administration. This is violative of our procurement policy to bring a vendor here to make a pitch. So I'm going to go on record saying this is inappropriate, and I think you should shut it down right now. This also puts the chief in a very awkward position. I don't know when the bidding process, I don't know when the RFP opened, I don't know if it closed, I don't know what the terms are. I think this is highly inappropriate. I wish to bring this to the council's attention.
Yeah, I don't want to be a part of this meeting. It's definitely a violation of state procurement.
Yeah. Okay, Councilmember Derek. We're talking
I got
about,
a question as far as with the cameras. I agree with, we should have some kind of, extra cameras that we can use when you're hotspots, but my problem is that, my question is, how many cameras do we, have right now in District 2? Because I think that if we're gonna get cameras that are gonna operate for that particular district, I don't want it to be that we're getting these new cameras just for that district, because that's supposed to be a lot of the hotspots. It would be nice to get the community to be involved, but maybe the council holding some kind of hearing so that we can get the community to be stakeholders to hear what's going on and what these cameras gonna be placed at. Because when you say hotspots, with all the stuff that's happening in my district, I don't want my district to become a target, and I don't want people to be getting put on the spot. I don't want to be taking it like the pilot to be District 2. So I think that if we're gonna have the cameras up and running, that we should have cameras done the correct way and have the community involved in one way or another. Another thing was, I was gonna ask was, is there like guidelines that prohibited certain things that can be recorded, or like are we recording everything? Like, how does that work? That won't get us in trouble as like even listeners.
So the first part, I absolutely 100% agree with you as far as community input. The original locations were selected, I think, at the time for similar hotspots. So please refresh my memory on District 2, but I can consider it in terms of patrol zones. So you're 104th?
So pretty much, I can't really see. I'm thinking of.
Who's it to?
111, that's
Right.
District 2.
111, okay.
But my main concern is, honestly, is 8th, 9th, 10th, 5th, J, Rensselaer,
Yep.
you know, Ingalls,
Right.
those hotspots.
Absolutely. So I can tell you where they exist now, and then you can definitely bring up how you want to expand that, if you want to expand it. So going north from Hoosick Street, you have J and 6. You have Middleburg, Ingalls, Dow, Glen, and then the next one, actually it's not even there anymore. 112 and 5th would have been the next one, but there was a when the light poles were all knocked down by a truck, they went away. So you have that on 6th, and then on River Street, within your district, would be Bond and River. That's the only other location where there's existing city cameras. But as far as expanding, absolutely, I agree. I think I said that towards the beginning. We want to have input on this, so we can identify spots where there's maybe criminal activity, but maybe there's other concerns that people want to have cameras, or the opposite, they don't want cameras. That's.
I think they probably would be less inclined to saying no to them if it's gonna be a group discussion. I think also like if people gonna put cameras on 8th Street, a lot of this stuff can slow down on 8th Street. The trees got cut down a little bit. So that might give some more light, pitch black over there. So that you may not even need a camera on that block if you had certain things taking place over here, better light in the trees cut down or whatever.
Absolutely. So you certainly talked about it. Other members have talked about that. We talked about it at the time, just illuminating 8th Street for sure. So that's one of the things that's the design, preventing crime through that design. That's important as well. The second question you had about the recording, they're all at city streets, intersections. So there's no expectation of privacy on city streets. So they are recording 24/7. Assuming that they're working.
Right.
But yeah, so whatever's in their field of view, that's recording all the time. So there's no legal restriction on what can be recorded. I don't know as far as the procurement.
Councilmember Cummings, and just so folks are aware, we're here to talk about next steps, and I think the chief's aware of that. We need to get a grip, we need to help. That's what we're here for, find the funding, move forward. Councilmember Cummings.
That's it. Questions. The first would just be, I'm trying to understand exactly how footage from cameras is used in investigations. In particular, first, to the point of what's being captured, how long is footage being stored? I guess it's a couple days on camera and then 30 days. How long on the server?
The initial plan was to have 30 days on the server. As cameras were added over the years, and there's actually failed hard drives on some of the servers, it's considerably less than that.
So it's just whenever the override is needed.
Correct.
It's just servers.
So
But then I assume when there's an investigation happening, you pull it off the server. So there's certain information, certain camera footage that's stored longer term when it's part of the investigation.
Absolutely. So if it's available, we know we need that particular footage, it's archived separately. So it's on a DVD or larger flash drive.
And then, so I assume a very small proportion of actual crimes occur in road intersections, although I'd be interested to hear if you have any statistics.
Statistics I do not have
Or
off the head,
sense,
but
am I right in that sense that probably and purpose therefore is more on sort of tracking people after, if someone committed something, then you want to be able to follow their path. Is it more for that than actually happening to catch a crime in action, or is
there have been crimes in progress captured?
Right.
Yes,
I mean,
certainly.
if the goal is to catch crimes in action, we need a lot more cameras.
Right.
Because crimes are gonna happen in the shadows, right?
But you're absolutely right. It's usually for the movement of vehicles or people through an intersection or through an area. So that's why the cameras are placed at the intersection, between the sidewalks and the streets. If it happens in the area where there's a camera, likely we will see the person or vehicle. Usually not sufficient detail to make a positive identification necessarily, but enough to then piece that together with other evidence to see what was the route of travel, and then go from there. Smaller crimes like might be a larceny or something like that, it's less involved. But as you get into potentially like a serious assault or sexual assault or a homicide, cameras, both city-owned and private cameras, are extremely useful in trying to watch for movement so they can see where the person came from, where they fled to, and then maybe we see them getting into another vehicle. So they're absolutely useful for the investigative phase, for sure.
Great. And then to that point of the private cameras, I know a while ago there was an effort to sort of create a database of where they are, how to get access to them. Where are we at with that? I know like more and more people are getting Ring doorbells and other private security cameras on the site, and I want to make sure that we're up to speed in terms of, those are very high quality cameras that are often probably in locations that might be more likely to actually see the crime happen than at the intersection. So wondering where we're at in terms of creating a list of those and how we canvass for those when we get them.
Sure, there is a camera registry. It's not very well populated. I'm not overly concerned about not having it in the registry, because when there's a serious incident, our detectives, our patrol officers, they're going to canvass the area anyway, and they're going to identify all visible cameras. We also, and I've mentioned this a couple times, not related specifically to cameras, but many things, we're having very good support from the public with our online tips. And so a lot of times we'll receive information from someone that says, I have a camera on my business, a camera on my home. I may have footage available if you want to contact me, and we'll follow up that way.
Great.
The registry, it could be useful, but we're not going to go by that printed list anyway. We're going to go to, we're going to go and see what we can see and follow up it and we can. I'm sorry, was there a third question?
Probably.
Okay. Let me think of it. Go back.
Do you think reviving the efforts of that camera registry would be any help or assistance in terms of, having folks register? I know some folks actually now are asking, do we have a registry? We've had a registry, I want to say, for maybe 4 years? Or,
Seems about that.
yeah, 3 or 4. Do you think reviving that would help at all? Because we could work with the administration to, get that rolling if it felt it would be helpful.
I have to confirm for sure, but I'm pretty sure the link is still available on the city website.
It is.
Okay.
It could be useful, but again, we're going to go canvas
Of course.
real time anyway. So,
Of
but
course.
if people want to offer that information, sure, we'll do that, consolidate it onto that registry.
Well, I think also it might be an incentive to actually get people to partner with obviously the police, but more importantly, maybe even to go out and get a camera. I do know a couple of people, maybe 2 or 3 blocks east of Verdiles are, there's like 3 neighbors, 3 households who plan to get outdoor surveillance cameras. There's a real effort down there to tackle low-level crime. So saying that it might be something to at least give that incentive to get the registry maybe working a little better, and obviously keep it up to date. It makes no sense having a link if people aren't going to LinkedIn. So, and I think Councilmember Cummings remembered his third question.
I just have more follow-up
Go
on
ahead.
this.
It's okay.
So I think the registry does it just ask where the camera is located? I'm sort of wondering whether it might be worth doing some plan. I just sat through this really good presentation about the street trees and the mapping of that. And there's some amazing mapping technologies now around, like, could we start to get a sense of what are the coverage areas that are covered by various cameras?
Like a mapping, GIS.
Right, with
Yeah.
GIS, so that then we can see, these are the areas where we don't have any coverage. If we can do some preemptive, obviously we probably don't want to publish a map of the dark zones, but
Right.
for our own use, having a sense of these are the areas that don't have public or private coverage, and prioritizing adding our coverage to places that don't have existing private coverage. Part of that question, though, is also when there is private coverage, is it comparable or better, or how does it compare to one that we don't control?
Just in my experience of the private cameras, it seems that people have probably installed them after ours were originally installed. So just the technology would probably be that much newer. How businesses configure theirs or homeowners configure theirs, for the resolution and for the field of view, what they're trying to look at. Maybe they're trying to look at their front door versus the street. So in terms of coverage, I'm not sure. But as far as mapping, that could be useful. We don't, in terms of police department, have any in-house GIS experts. Certainly, I think the city has some people maybe could help with that. That's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
One thing that I remembered from your comment, I don't think it was a question, but you mentioned the Ring doorbells and things like that.
Yeah.
I'm trying to learn more about it. We're doing some research on it. I know Ring as a company, no endorsement whatsoever, but I think they're doing a program with police departments.
Yeah.
But just from what I read initially, I'm a little leery because it's giving like real-time access to the police department. I don't know that homeowners necessarily would want that. I don't know that I would want that.
It's a very good point.
So after the fact, if a homeowner or business owner wants to provide footage to use that as evidence in a case, that's up to them. So we don't want anybody to feel compelled. Certainly, if it helps their neighborhood, they're probably likely to.
In terms of admissibility and in terms of ease of access for your detectives, it's comparable, maybe a little more like work, but pretty comparable, or?
So video evidence, in my experience, and Council President mentioned the particular case with Noelle Alcarama, where she was a homicide victim, and I'm by no means a lawyer, but the rules of evidence in terms of video was difficult. In my experience with that case, I was over the course of 2 days on stand for multiple hours just trying to get that introduced. I know similarly that I think there was private video from that case and also video from another government building. And so the foundation has to be laid by the defense, or the assistant district attorney, whoever's prosecuting the case. So it's not automatic it's going to get in. I don't think it's any more legwork in terms of our detectives once they find the person willing to provide the video. But someone has to be able to testify to the authenticity of that video. So then it becomes, if it's a homeowner, that homeowner system, they would be the witness in that case. So a lot of times, again, these are investigative tools that may not be direct evidence at trial, but it's helpful for investigators. So they might, let's just say a business owner, take the homeowner out of it. They might provide the video, but not want to provide testimony at trial. So that might help us find where someone went, but it might not be enough at trial to say, here's the picture of the perpetrator on video. So.
Okay. But that is the general use for this video anyway.
It's extremely valuable as an investigative tool. It potentially is useful as evidence, direct evidence. Yeah.
Councilmember Golding.
Chief, have we thought about any type of maybe a way to get homeowners in those dark spots to maybe consider putting cameras up, maybe some sort of small incentive or something that we could maybe create a program where we could reach out to the dark streets that are not on camera and maybe try to get some of the property owners there who are into their communities to maybe put a camera system on the house, because I know that they'll get a discount through their homeowner's insurance, and probably most of them might not even know that, but maybe we could offer something a little bit more lucrative that would be less than the camera cost, but a little something to say, hey, we'll get this home system at this number, whatever. Maybe work a program out with some sort of vendor that would not only have the systems and discount for the homeowners, but also install them, so we could give them a great deal to put it in their house, a sense of security, and they get a discount off their insurance policy.
Years ago, we looked at a program, I want to say it was from Philadelphia, I could have the location wrong, but a similar incentive program for private homeowners or businesses to install cameras, and they would supplement the cost of that. I think as we looked at the city, we weren't sure how it wasn't me as the police chief then, but whoever was dealing with it, we were just doing input on the camera side. The question was, are we going to determine, is there a minimum standard for the video? Is there any liability attached if the city's paying for part of it and it doesn't work or doesn't help them in some way? And then it was, whatever that pot of money is for that program, it probably wouldn't be sufficient for every homeowner that wants to take advantage of the program. So then how are you making the determination? So let's just say this is state and fifth. It's mostly businesses and commercial. But, if I live here and the city says, oh, I want a camera here, so the city pays for me to put a camera, but my neighbor over here, they say, we don't need a camera there. So they're not getting a city supplemented camera. Right. Who makes that determination? This was just some.
I understand, but I'm not talking about city supplemented. When I mean incentives, it's not about us paying for them. It's maybe we just provide, and we go to a contractor that has camera systems, and we say, look, we like to put this out to the city of Troy residents. You normally charge $199. We'd like you to charge $129 to our clients for everyone that would take a part of that deal. And then this way they would have the system, and they would save that money. I wasn't thinking that we would incentivize with money, but just a grand conception of the savings that would be involved and the safety that would be involved. And all we would do is try to get a vendor that would work with us and say, look, if we can sell 1,000 or 2,000 home cameras on certain corners, we'd be game to give you that discount, and you could offer it up to your clients and have them come directly to us. This way, the city's not involved in it. It's just us offering them an opportunity to buy a safety system for their home at a discounted rate that would make it affordable, and also they could, their salesman is good enough, he'll talk about the savings that they get down the road also.
And you know what, it kind of struck a light bulb, no pun, but the fire alarms. I'm not sure how that arrangement goes. There's a partnership between Red Cross and the firefighters, and they donate so many fire alarms to various neighborhoods. I mean, there are smoke alarms, I apologize, but it's something maybe to look at, down the road. Yeah. Councilmember Garrett,
I don't disagree, but I have to say I can't fully agree with my guy up here. People don't want to be snitches. Just tell you like this is what it is. Sometimes people, 6 people on the street and just see something happening and not near one will say something. So you don't want to put that pressure on the community to feel like they have to sign up for it. Now, some areas may be okay with that, but I don't know. My other thing was, before we even get to getting the cameras all set up and fixed, we are gonna definitely look into getting an IT person to make that. I feel like that should be a whole different department, or another branch on the tree for the police department, because you don't want to take away from the people that's out, on the street doing the work, the police officers, and have them behind watching the camera. It should be two separate departments from what I'm looking at. So are we going to get IT or a few IT guys?
well, we have an IT department, but, and that department has 2 full-time, Warren and Chris. Warren retired, oh, that's what's going out, so 3. So Warren retired. I saw the job opportunity go out for the IT specialist, but what I did write down, I wrote a little checklist. What I would like to see is one dedicated solely to the police department. So I kind of wrote that on a little checklist here, which if you wanted, we could wrap up. I know Andy, our comptroller, is waiting with bated breath. But Chief, before I go through the checklist, could you update us? You had mentioned that some requests went out. I'm not aware of that. I'm going to forward you 2 vendors who contacted me in the last 2 days. But if you could fill us in, because on my checklist, I'll include it as next steps. We just want to know how much and the timeline and how soon can we get going. Thank you.
So we had not solicited bids, we were just simply
Okay.
requesting quotes.
Gotcha.
And that's all the
Fair.
stage that we're at.
Okay.
As you know, the procurement policy is sometimes difficult to work through, so if they're on state contract, that's helpful. If that's about the full bid, we'll have to follow up on that. But just in terms of having vendors come in, take a look, they've done a walk of downtown, they've done a site assessment of what we have existing with the vendors so far.
Okay.
We hope to have some more of those quotes back, and then from there, we'll have that ballpark figure and decide how does this have to go out to bid?
Yep.
Like I said, we have 1 back so far. We hope to have the remaining back soon. If there's other vendors interested and they've reached out, we forward
I'll
those.
forward them to you and the mayor. Yep.
We'll follow up with that.
And Andy. Perfect. And, okay. Before I go through the checklist of kind of where we are and next steps, did anyone else have any other questions?
Council President?
Yes.
Yeah, I would just like to make a couple comments. I've been sort of thinking about this a little more, and I certainly think that we do need to make sure we have, we're doing all we can to repair and take care of the current camera structures that we have. And I'm glad you're looking at the the SDs and all of the storage capacities there. I did want to just echo the comments of my colleague, Councilmember Garrett, about making sure we do that outreach into communities to make sure, and you mentioned this as well, right? Some people have feel averse to being filmed. I've lived in London, and I was looking up quick facts. Londoners on any given day, on average, can be viewed by cameras 300 times a day. So I mean, I appreciate the words of my colleague, because as we're thinking about this, I know I have people in my district who want cameras, but I think there's a lot of people who are concerned about that oversight. So I think the community outreach will be key to that and in developing that plan. So thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And, I see that as a real issue with the long term. So here's what I have, kind of wrapping this up and add as needed. Short term, long term. The short term, the 120, the 22 intersections, essentially we would get a maintenance program. IF has number one, multiple vendors. Number two, network manager. I see we need someone in the police department overseeing this. So I would love to dedicate somebody from IT solely for the police cameras. I think it's totally needed, and when the body cams get implemented, that's going to be needed. So if you want to hit on that one, sure.
Well, just real quick, I was going to say, so we're going to have personnel assigned to this operationally, but to your point about a network administrator, that's something that exceeds our capacity. So we're going to have people assigned, captain of technology.
Yep.
We have a sergeant who will primarily, under that unit, will primarily deal with the body worn camera program. We have one civilian video clerk. We'll be hiring a second civilian video clerk. Apologize.
It's okay.
And,
it's the last season.
Yeah. So operationally, that'll be helpful.
Okay.
But in terms of the network administration, we don't have that piece covered. So ideally, if we could have something in the police
We need
department,
that
that'd
then.
be great.
Okay, then we need it. I mean, I see us here. What do you need to get the job done? What tools and resources to get it up and running now, and then look long-term, working with neighborhoods as my colleagues expressed, and obviously identifying more funding for that long-term effort and hotspots. Number three, I have, network existing cams needed. We already talked about that. Number four, the camera registry was mentioned. I would like to, maybe if us could work with, I have that next. But working with Johnny Saka, the communications deputy, to get that kind of re-energized, revive the camera registry. Number five,
The camera, I just want to point out, the camera
Sorry.
registry is active. It's active.
no,
on
but
the
I mean,
website.
get people to actually register, like do an effort to outreach.
Publicity.
Right, well, and I'm just saying that it is currently
Yep.
active on the website. It's right next to the crime tips line, so. if anyone
Correct.
goes to the-
So we're good first step. We said that on.
The first step, see, you're live.
Along with the press release when we announced the program several years ago.
No, we'll promote it. That's what I'm talking about. The link's there, we'll promote it. Obviously in partnership with John Suffolk. Number five, GIS mapping.
Run the police department. I don't work for the police department. I don't run the police department. The police
A
department.
press release,
Right.
that's all I'm saying.
Right, I understand. I'm just saying that the police department runs their operations. We don't tell the police
I
department
know.
necessarily what to do as it pertains to that particular program. Just to clarify, I
Totally get it.
don't do PR for the police department.
Okay, GIS mapping. I love it. I think that honestly, that is an awesome idea to get GIS map. I love it. Okay, we're charging you with that.
Are you going to support a consultant to come do it?
Absolutely. And then obviously we talked about the SD card replacement, which would be a part of it, local storage, network video recorder. And as I say, I really see the short-term, long-term. Now, I guess the big question is, we really don't have the total funding. You're saying 185, Assemblymember McDonald appropriate 125. We could identify another 60. I'm sure we could do that with the mayor. More importantly, Chief, to get that network manager, would you say for the short term, to get that actually working, up and running, would you need that network manager? Do you feel in-house would presently suffice that? Only because I'm trying to get that dollar amount approximate.
I think the city certainly needs that network administrator. If we can't have our own, as long as there's one for the city,
Yeah.
I think that's going to be necessary going forward.
Okay, fair enough, yeah. All right, so, saying that, I mean, and the call is out for the network administrator, correct?
Application's due Monday.
That's my
Okay,
understanding.
Monday, perfect, beautiful, thank you. Not that you know that, thank you. All right, so, I think we leave here at least with an idea and a sense of where we need to go. Is there anything else, I mean, obviously funding, et cetera, what else can we do as a council, to provide you with those resources and tools moving forward from here?
I think continued support of the police department and our members in terms of just their daily operations, whether it's technology, whether it's crime activity that's going on, and just the good work that we're doing on a daily basis. I think that's been recognized many times. If there's concerns or any suggestions from the community, we're always open to that. Like I said, we're having great success with, because I think it's anonymous, so it's helpful to the people that are concerned to report information, but that web tip line, again, we talked about it at the meeting last time, at the Lansingburg group meeting, that I just ask that people be patient when you provide information. It's not always actionable at the time or quickly that you're going to see the instant results. But after that meeting, a lot of people came up to me and were thankful for some of the work we're doing, North Central, Lansingburg area, that took some time to develop information sufficient to make arrests, but it has had an impact on certain drug activity or drug houses in the neighborhood. So please be patient. Please continue to give us information, work with us. We'll try to work with you. The entire community, we're in this together. We said that multiple times. I think everybody here agrees with that. Technology is a piece of all this, but it's not the only thing. The people are far more important than technology. So if you can continue to support the police department, we appreciate that.
Absolutely, and I will speak on behalf of my colleagues with that. Before we close, I know Councilmember Guerra has something. I would also, timeline, how soon can we get this rolling? Obviously, you don't handle procurement. I do know Andy's department handles that, but do you feel you're pretty much almost ready to get that RFP out the door? Because we could do like a 30-day, I believe, RFP under procurement maybe, but do you feel that you have enough to get that RFP out the door?
I think we've sufficiently identified our requirements in terms of what it needs to look like for a procurement policy. I don't know, I'd have to sit down with the comptroller's office to see exactly what we need to provide them. I would want it to be sufficiently detailed so that the vendors that are going to submit bids we're comparing similar things. There's so many different systems. You can go on eBay and buy a DVR for $20, but that's not what we want. We need commercial grade, redundant systems, and so I want to make sure the specs are proper. I think we have sufficient information to do that.
Okay.
And then the timeline going forward, whatever that procurement policy or period is.
Yeah.
Then the vendor selection, purchase order, the ordering of equipment, the installations.
Yeah.
If you're asking me to guess,
No.
I'm talking like a couple of months, I would think.
Yeah. I would say, very good, Chief. Councilmember Garrett.
I just wanted to say, we do appreciate you,
Thank you.
District 2, especially because when City Deli Mart was, I guess it was robbed. I know that the whole door is like jacked up. They did appreciate that. It was 3 officers out there, 3 patrol cars out there. And we hope that is a speedy report or resolution, yes, because that is one of the good stores. Not saying that I don't want to. Well, no, that's one of the good stores. I meant what I said. That's one of the good stores. They are, they be well. I have seen them plenty of times. I go in there probably twice a day with my kids sometimes. But we go in there a lot, and a lot of people in the community go there. There's people that walk from 9th Street that come all the way down to that store. So we appreciate them being there. We don't want them to be scared off. The guys in there are honest and they're good guys, and they're not trying to push any negative stuff to our community. So we want to keep them satisfied.
I know exactly what you're saying.
So
Absolutely.
we appreciate you guys.
Thank you, appreciate it.
And Chief, very quickly, on that note, but as I said, we appreciate everything that you're doing. And following up on the meeting the other night, I received a call yesterday, and they said, Carmela, you mentioned Park, Walk, and Talk. You're not going to believe it. A couple officers were actually walking, I believe, over by 7th Ave the other night. So I want to thank you for that. And I do know that people are really interested in that. I know it's very, very, very difficult with minimum manning, et cetera, but I do want to thank you for moving in that direction. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you. All right, we'll move right into Andy. If you want to come up, I know you have a beautiful baby at home that you can't wait to get home to stay up all night. Chief, thank you again. Thank you.
All right.
You guys don't mind going right into this, okay? Andy, I know that you have, maybe 12 or 1300 points to go over. Okay, 12 or 13 points with the independent audit from 2018. Take it away if you don't mind.
So there's 3 audit reports included here. I'll start with the bigger of the 3. So you have the financial statement audit, the federal single audit of expenditures, and the single audit of New York State Department of Transportation expenditures. So starting with the financial statement audit, obviously the Bonadeo group couldn't be here tonight. They are the ones who prepared this. It's still in draft form. Assuming it passes tonight, it will hopefully be certified and filed tomorrow. If not, by close of business on Monday, it will be filed on time. The reason for the delay is obviously I've been out for the last 4 weeks, and there are some changes to the financial statements that I want to go through. And you can see why as we move through this.
Hey, Andy, can you start off? I apologize, I should have told you, Andy and I had a conversation earlier. Can you tell us point blank where we ended up in 2018?
Yep, I'm gonna get there.
Perfect.
I'm gonna get
Thank
there.
you.
So I would first point your attention to page 2, and I'm gonna have to bounce back and forth because of the way this is laid up. So historically, if you look at page 2 under summary of opinions, we received 1 opinion. It was adverse. It was adverse because the city is not in accordance with GAAP. The city is not in accordance with GAAP for 1 reason. We do not have a fixed asset review that needs to be done by a third party. As we've discussed, it costs, if I were to guess, somewhere between $100,000 and $200,000. They need to come in and review every street, every road in the city. They need to review every piece of pipe under the ground in the city.
Thank you for coming. Thank you.
Once we started the audit this year, Bonadeo came to me with the option of preparing the financial statements in a GAAP format, with the only exception being the fixed asset piece. By doing this, you have this list of summary of opinions. As you can see, the governmental activities is adverse. Again, that's the fixed asset. Every other opinion unit in this audit is unmodified. That is the highest level of assurance you can have in a financial statement audit, or any type of audit.
It's very good. Thank you.
If you look on page 2, right below that, you see the basis for adverse opinion on governmental activities. It explains it's the fixed assets.
Andy, in moving forward, do you feel next year or the year after?
I would love to do it. It's just a matter of how much it costs.
Got it. We don't have an idea how much.
I have 3 firms that we could look for.
Okay.
I don't want to move that direction if it's between a rock and a hard place, because I don't want to get people think we're going to do it if it's too expensive.
Yeah.
But I want to get rid of the adverse
I
opinion.
recall there were some other projects that seemed like there was some potential overlap with doing that work anyway.
It is, but this has to be specific. This has to be for a singular purpose. I mean, this could be used for other things, which I think would be very beneficial.
Can the scope of this work be modified to include a little extra detail if the planning department?
It could. I mean, the base of the work has to be to cover GASB 34.
Could also gather.
Yeah, you can put whatever else on it you want. It's got to have GASB 34 in there.
Yeah.
So if you go to page 4, there's two sets of financial statements in here. There's government-wide, and then there's fund level. Page 4 is the balance sheet of government-wide. This is full accrual method, and there is conversions. We don't do full accrual in our office. Bonadio converts it. The only thing I'll note on this page, you're going to see a column of governmental activities. That's all city funds, plus long-term fixed asset, essentially fixed assets, less long-term liabilities. The component units that are listed here, as part of preparing this type of financial statement, you are required to include your component units. That is the IDA, the LBC, the CRC, and the Troy Land Bank.
I was going to ask that because they were broken out, yeah, and I'm like,
No,
we don't audit them.
that's
Okay.
part of, because they have a tie to the city. Along with the, and when you get to the notes, you're gonna see Troy Max in there, Troy Supervisory Board's in there. Troy Max financial statements completely fold up into the city's accounting records. So they're not a component unit per se because all of their activities are already in our books. The other 4 are not. Now I will note, and you have to flip back on page 1, you're gonna see a disclaimer right at the beginning about the IDA, the LDC, and the CRC.
Yeah.
That is because Bonadio does not audit those 3 entities. They put a disclaimer in that they've been audited. The firm who does it for those 3 has to certify in a letter to the city, but it's still not Bonadio's work, so it's fair for them to put that in.
And I said something on the pilot, and obviously we have nothing to do with the idea of the pilot.
So you have to fold all that in, and that's the other reason for the delay in this. It's a tremendous amount of work to convert to GAAP, and especially the first year because you have to go back and restate January 1 to GAAP. It's not. You have to account for the historical information. Page 5 is the government-wide operating statement. That's not the operating statement that we always discuss because it's on full accrual. If you go to page 6, this is the balance sheet that everyone is used to seeing. It splits out the general fund, the special grants fund, the water fund, the sewer fund, the debt service fund, and the capital projects fund. The trust and agency fund is listed on a separate page now in accordance with GAAP. Page 7 is the balance sheet that you're used to seeing. Page 8. This is the conversion of the city's total government-wide fund balance from modified accrual to full accrual. That's
There's
just to know. So is there?
Yeah, I mean,
What
don't worry
page?
about that, it's bonds and notes, pay a fee, payable.
Which page?
8, I believe, 8. You'll see it right under, long-term liabilities, bonds and notes, pay a fee.
I will have them fix that.
I think so. Just that one.
So if you go to page 9, this answers the question you had about the final surpluses. This is the operating statement that everyone's used to seeing.
This is the meat, give it up.
This is so the final numbers. General fund had a surplus of $1.3 million. Special grants, water fund $313,000. Sewer fund $30,500. All the other funds those aren't usually reviewed. Those capital is we discussed throughout the year. Debt service fund is the MAC, pretty much. It's that, and then the transfers I make for the budget for the future years. Page 10 is the
Quick
convert.
question, the 1.3, did that jive with our A&D?
It is lower.
That's what I thought.
There were some adjustments made from after the AUD was filed tonight. I will note that there were no audit adjustments per se. All of them were agreed upon between Bonadio and myself. There is no, and I meant to discuss this at the beginning. Usually, historically, there's been a management letter that comes with The audit, that tends to be a slap on the wrist essentially for our office. There is no management letter for the 2018 fiscal year. There was nothing that arose to the level that would require a management letter to be written.
Huge kudos, seriously.
Thank you. Page 10 is the conversion of the operating statement from modified accrual to flow accrual. Page 11 is the trust and agency balance sheet. Page 12 is the audited numbers for the component units, so you can see what makes it up.
I mean, it's so different.
It's very, there's now a cash flow statement that's on page 14. If you are bored and want to go through it, I mean, these are much more formal, what you should be having done type of financial statements.
I think it's harder to read now.
It is.
I really do.
It is. Unfortunately, this is what people want to see, and it will.
You people want.
Yes, this is what people like me to enjoy to read.
Accountants want to see it.
Yeah,
this way.
So from pages 15 on back is the notes to the financial statement. Nothing really in here. They're a lot longer, obviously because of going to GAAP.
Andy, did I see something about lawsuits?
Generally, there's something in here about
I
lawsuits.
thought it said we had enough, I think it said, if I recall, that we had enough money for potential lawsuits, but obviously that's not taking into, that only looks, at our insurance, things
City
like
is
that.
party to various legal proceedings, which normally.
What page is that on?
Operations, 46.
Sorry.
The outcome of these proceedings is not expected to have a material effect on the financial condition of the city. The management considers its reserves for adjustment. Is that adjustments?
Yeah.
Judgments. No, judgments and claims should be adequate. So basically that's just saying, we think.
Yeah, so they send letters to the city's defense counsel, I guess, that corporation counsel had the right ones, two other law firms had the right one, just attesting to where things stand in different varying lawsuits. Obviously, everyone probably can figure out which ones are on their list.
Yeah.
They review what comes back, and it's, Bonadeo and I discussed it, and
so when they say management considers its that's just talking about us. It's not, their auditors aren't saying they think that we have enough. It's that the city of Troy.
right, and you also have to keep in account insurance. I mean, we have insurance coverage on these cases, so that plays a significant impact into our financial exposure. Right.
We're allocating what, the first 500,000?
That's a question for the corporation counsel. He knows it much better than I do.
He left.
He left. I believe they did switch it in one of the years. So some were 500, some were 250. I can't remember which. By the time I had it, I apologize. The notes are the notes. I don't necessarily know how much in detail.
Unless
any council member wants to go through those, fine.
Pretty much, if you compare this,
There is one
if you compare the notes, if you see errors, if you can just email them to me, please.
Yeah. Did you have a question?
Yeah, it's just
There's some, any difference in the notes is from going to GAAP or specifically for pension and retiree health insurance. As we discussed earlier this year, there's a change in accounting methodologies and principles from GASB, so that they are much longer now and numbers look a lot higher.
Yeah.
That wraps up the financial statement audit.
Good, are you guys moving on to the DOT?
Yes.
Perfect.
DOT's audit, this will be really quick. I will direct you to
I would say the opinion.
page 4, just so you can see these are the programs that are subject to this audit. It's CHIPS, the Ingalls Ave boat launch, the South Troy roadway, and the arterial maintenance reimbursement the city receives. If you go to page 6, this is their opinion. No material weaknesses, no significant deficiencies, no current year findings on anything. It was clean.
Beautiful. I'm good. Ready to move on to the last?
Federal single audit. Go to page 5 is all the programs. If you look at page 7, adverse is on here again because of the fixed assets, unmodified for the actual numbers. Everything is listed as no. That's good.
Yeah.
I will just point your attention to page 9. This is the one thing I wanted to discuss. In years past, we've had a finding on the federal single audit for the CDBG program and the cost allocation plan. Late last year, I had a conversation with Alan Walter and Joe Hero, who are the partner and manager on our audit, respectively, about where things stood with the cost allocation plan. And realistically, if we did the cost allocation plan for 2018 or 2017, the second that it was issued, it was null and void, and we would have been written up for it again because there's a garbage fund. What we did was, and for those who don't know, it triggers because under CDBG, you take the direct salaries, but you're allowed to take overhead. The city hasn't had a cost allocation plan done since 2009. We were using bad percentages. We took the direct actual costs of the CDBG department. We took the actual costs of the code enforcement reimbursement. Page 9 gets rid of the prior finding. And the most important line there, obviously, is status finding no longer valid. That eliminates that issue.
That's it.
Carolyn Skripchak and I from CDBG have had discussions about Carolyn looking to see if CDBG could fund a cost allocation plan for fiscal year end 2019. We are probably going to put out an RFP and look to do that. I think it's very beneficial for the city to have a cost allocation plan. It's perfectly acceptable under HUD standards and Bonadillo standards to go actuals and then go back to having the percentage base. I'm not going back to the percentage base until I have a cost allocation plan done that reflects the current state of the city.
So what would the RFP entail, and would it be an accounting?
We're waiting. There is another local municipality that we've heard is putting out an RFP to do one. I think it's Albany.
Okay.
We're going to look at theirs. Essentially, what will happen is we'll put it out. It's going to, sometimes accounting firms do them. They used to do them more, and they've kind of moved away from them, and there's other financial firms that will do them. What this will also do, when the financial audit goes back out, other firms will and I don't want to get, Bonadillo is phenomenal. They are the #1 governmental auditing firm in the state. But as Council President knows and Councilmember Cummings knows, no one responds to our RFP. There's 2 reasons. 1, no one wants to do a cost allocation plan because it's too much work and firms don't make money on it. And B, they don't like issuing adverse opinion financial statements. We've now corrected both of those going forward.
And I think going the multi-year helps.
Right.
Good.
So that's.
And we're done with Bonadillo next year.
So Bonadillo has the 2019 audit, and then
2020.
no.
Oh,
So
2019.
2019.
Correct.
So I have
Yep.
to go out for the
Yep.
for the fiscal year end 2020 financial statement.
Good. Andy, I did see the comptroller today put out distressed communities, and I was really, really happy to see Troy was not on that list. What I did see, and I don't know, will you go through their, not tonight, but they did a report on each municipality across the state based on our A&D, I believe. But long story short, we did not make the distress list.
We have no designation. We scored 12.5.
Correct. But they had, is it something new, an environmental report attached?
That's been there for a few years. Ours keeps creeping up. That has That's the city as a whole, so we have no control on that.
Okay.
The
Like
one
it's
that-
population, it has home values, it has the income levels. I mean, I have never seen
Yeah,
that before.
that's been there for a few years.
Okay,
It's at 40, it was at 36 for 2017.
right.
But we have gone down, I think we've gone from 18 and a half to 12 and a half now.
Right. Yep. Our unemployment went down also.
And given the financial structure of the city, 12 and a half is the lowest possible score we can have.
One of the things, did you see the percent change in home value? It was
I
at-
haven't pulled the
Okay.
environment,
Pull it up.
I don't.
Okay, because it went from 0.91 in 2017 to negative 2.10 in 2018.
I'll take a
So
look
take a
at
look
it.
at it.
And
Perfect.
I usually talk to OSC about it when they're here looking at the budget.
Okay. No problem. Did anyone have questions on the draft 2018 independent audit? Okay. We can wrap this up and go right into our special meeting to pass the resolution.
Perfect.
But saying that, before we close, public comment period, does anyone in the audience have? Yes, I believe. We have to take a vote on the resolution.
Yeah.
Did anyone want to speak? Okay, perfect. I
I'd
will,
like to speak if that's okay.
okay, yeah. Let us pass this resolution. We'll go into
Yeah, go
public comment. Perfect, thank you. So bear with me, Mara. Thank you. Only because I gotta have my, draft audit. Thank you. All right. Resolution 69, we have a resolution accepting the 2018 financial audit, the single audit of federal expenditures, and single audit of New York State DOT expenditures as prepared by the Bonadio Group, Council President Mantello, at the request of the administration. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion, Councilmember Parator, do I have a second? Second, Councilmember Garrett, discussion. I just want to thank Andy and his department. I know how much work goes into these. You do have an outside firm, but you have to be there literally on call all the time. So thank you. Please let Selena and everyone know.
Thank you.
All
And
in
this,
favor- sorry.
this will be filed, like I said, once it's filed, and we'll send out probably electronically, again, the final, and we'll put it right on the website. So everything will be up by Monday or Tuesday at the latest.
Perfect. Thank you, Andy. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution 69 carries 7-0. I will now open it up to the public and, yeah, perfect. Yeah, thank you. This is regarding anything on tonight's agenda. Did you want to speak regarding the body or the police cameras or the independent audit?
I don't think it actually has to do with the independent audit, but I do wonder if the,
Come on up, just, please. If you could state your name and address, that'd be great. Thank you.
Daniel Morrissey, 167 Hutton Street.
Oh, hold on.
Oh, it's, yeah, I didn't hear myself. On the bottom?
Hold on one second.
Perfect.
Daniel.
So Daniel Morrissey, 167 Hutton Street.
Sorry.
And I don't think it actually showed up in the audit because I haven't read the audit, but I would guess that it hasn't. The concern I have is about the independent review about the Edson Thevenin case, and the public has heard that you all have seen it, and I'm just wondering if you can confirm that.
We have all read the report.
So were you able to read the first two, the internal reports by the police department?
What we can do
That's
only
public.
because during the public comment, that report is public, the
Yeah.
internal affairs, correct.
Yeah,
But the other report has not been made public yet.
right. And I'm wondering if you know any of the details of how that process works. How do we get a chance to read that?
Yeah, it wasn't a report to the council. It was a report
Right.
to the mayor, so
Yeah.
I really think the mayor and the corporation council would have to make that public.
So the mayor would then point us towards the corporation council. So you think that's probably the avenue?
That should be your route,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay.
Okay,
All right.
all right.
And do you know?
We're now passing the buck, but we don't even have a copy of it.
No, I get it. I mean,
I'm with you.
I've been on boards before where you can't take the document out of the room. I understand that situation.
TJ's Google glasses, but.
I tried to create a diversion and take a picture, and Corporation Council Caruso called me. No, I'm kidding.
All right. Well, thank you. Yeah. Have a good night,
All
everyone.
right, thank you, Daniel. Being that there's no one else that would like to speak, do I have a motion to adjourn the finance? We have a motion, Councilmember Gully, we have a second, Councilmember Garrett. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? We'll go right into the special meeting as soon as Mara changes the